Hi there. This is Mondian Astral Oracles, and we're going to listen to part 3 of the Lemurian saga. And I'm here inside a mountain in one of the old gypsy caves of Sacramonte, and the other day someone was admiring the walls, and they do look spectacular. But I would say if you could smell it in here or see the level of mold, but perhaps some of the romanticism would sort of wear off. Also, I hope you can't hear the neighbor practicing their flamenco, but if you can, that there's nothing I can do about that. So I hope you you enjoy. I'm glad to be with you again. I bring you the sign of the open hand, the force of space touching to the root. I am the entity known as Yama, or I am an identity pattern that has lodged itself close into the heart of common humanity. I'm always with you, but there's a guide and a way shower, but also as a restrictive force, as something that guides you into the tunnels of life and shows you the light at the end to lead you onward into the quest that you as human beings have set out to complete collectively. And nothing is completed collectively unless it is undertaken with the voluntary participation of every individual. Therefore, I am happy to greet you again this day, and I am happy to share yet another chapter of Lemuria, an ancient civilization and an ancient collective of conscious humanoid beings. We were very close to you in signature. I have already gone over this, but something was quite different. We had a different layer of astral alignment connected to our individual signatures. That is, you could perceive us somewhat as star beings. There were few of us compared to the numbers of humanity, but we also reproduced, you might think of it as in terms of procreation, but it was more the case of reproduction. We built blueprints of human beings before human beings came to be on this planet. We had decided when we sensed that the energies of the planet would move into a different experience, the polar caps would begin to extend southward, the Antarctic northward, and great turmoil would be visited upon the species of this planet. We had decided to then architecturally map out the blueprint of our genetics that were undiscovered and to relay them into the data bank or the collective hive mind of the galaxy in order for these experiences to be explored by coming hominids on the planet Gaia. Therefore, it was natural for us to abandon our civilization and the project of existing physically on this planet when we left. But it was a dreadful day to witness. We are speaking here approximately of the place that you now know as the Mariana Trench, we believe the word is in English, the deepest depression on the planet, the deepest spot in the ocean floor. This indenture we had already aligned with when we were situated there geographically. There is a powerful naval point of the planet that collects energy to concentrate it into flourishing life. And so there is still to this day much flourishing life around this area, both beneath the ocean surface and in the lands and islands of primarily the nation of Indonesia, which surrounds it. See, the central pyramid was constructed as a type of stargate, and it drew on the inner earth energies. There was a clear beaming out of the signal of the planetary mother, that entity you know as Gaia. And we were very instrumental in trying to align some of the unsteady energies here with some of the more fixed energies of the stars of the Orion constellation. These were the patterns we were following. And I, in a lifetime, I spent as an acolyte of that temple. I was a type of spiritual engineer in this lifetime. I helped construct a funnel that would bring in massive amounts of energy into the Stargate. This was done as an attempt to switch not only our species, but also the material realm, the city we had constructed on this ancient continent, the main one, the one with the 13 concentric circles and the pyramid in the center, and the energetic pyramid mirroring it below surface, funneling this energy upwards and into the stars. But I was instrumental in creating a more complex Merkaba-like structure. This was added to the top of the pyramid. This was seen as a way to begin to funnel the energy into our city of the star constellation Orion, and it was an attempt for us to align the energies of the city with the greater cosmic star portal. See, it is not an uncommon feature of species when they begin to travel the universe rather than to fix themselves on one singular planet or around one singular star, that they come to this endeavor from the framework of having already constructed a perfect physical space, that is to have aligned and harmonized the energies around them in physical constructions to a degree where there is an unbroken grid work that can be transformed into the higher geometrical dimensions without much information, code, or content being lost. And so you can think of this as you approach, or you have, as a species, approached the idea of the afterlife. Certain visions of paradise are often imbued with a lot of geometric and numerological symbolism. And this is instinctively the same principle that I am communicating to you, that you express, only you have reversed engineered a lot of this. So these visions, they came to your seers, and then these seers, they spoke these words to the scribes, and then the scribes put these things down, and then the architects interpreted them with the help of theologians, and then they brought forward buildings that would mirror these proportions of these visions that had been communicated and written down. And so you still have ancient and sacred cities that were built on templates that were constructed harmoniously. Seeing as we are in the Iberian Peninsula, we could, for instance, point to the construction of the Escorial, or the famous royal palace in Madrid, which was meant to also express and the channel is searching for the English expression, the great door, that piece of metal, which we believe it was the sacred Laurentius who was martyred upon it. And so this is another attempt to create a symbolic geometric framework that can then be used to access certain vibrations within the human spectrum of understanding, of sensation, of experience, that are otherwise lost to you, and that were otherwise lost to you in the many, many millennia following the fall of Lemuria. I am happy to go into the story of Atlantis another day, but this is not the day for it. I will instead call upon you to envision the image that I am bringing forward here, the city built of concentric circles, having ley lines that bring up energy from the bottom of the ocean and the Earth's core, and transmit it out into the different sectors of the city, forming this protective bubble around it. And its white towers and limestone and alabaster configurations, both mirroring the sunlight, but also capturing those parts of the sunlight that were necessary to capture. It was an energetically rich place. We did much exploration, but much like many of the civilizations that you consider the beginning of your history, such as the Akkadians, the Sumerians, the Egyptians, we were very engaged in exploring esoterical technologies. So it was thought out that human beings would come along and undertake this encyclopedic project of giving names to all the other living things on this planet. That is your undertaking. Our taking was instead to sort out the energies of the planet. And so there is the intuition of the Ark of Noah here, is an ancient one. It is the idea that there are parts of you coming from the stars to this alien flooded world, this world where life is scarce and threatened by ecological disaster, and collecting those energies, collecting them in their complete pairs to protect and transmit these codes back to the galactic database, or the mind of God, you could also call it, where they will be used to create other species and to explore other themes in other worlds and in other planets. But as I have explained to you, we became very much engaged with the astral codes, and so it became less and less relevant for us to sustain ourselves on the life forms that grew on this planet, and instead we began to sustain ourselves on first sunlight, then the more pale and diffuse light of more distant suns, the light of the stars. And so that was also why I began and undertook the construction of this Merkaba along with my fellow wisdom seekers, engineers of ingenious spiritual undertakings. We were experimenting whether or not, if we constructed a type of geometric configuration pattern that would physically harness higher vibrational energies that were being transmitted from the stars, we could create our own star-like generational system. We are trying to transmit this vision of technology that is quite alien to you now into the mind of this human vessel. It is a type of power generator that can be switched on and off. But the problem was that we were seeking, as we had become engaged in merging with the light and merging our bodies with the light and taking in more and more energy, we were then seeking to load ourselves up with energy, so to speak. But what you may know from setting things on fire is that once too much energy is accumulated in one place, it begins to change its shape or state more rapidly into something more erratic. And so the grid work of the city, it began to falter. It came under an internal pressure of the energy we began generating in the central pyramid. And in the central pyramid, there was then emissions taking place, transmitting themselves to other parts of the galaxy, but also beaming certain energies of certain personalities of our collective that has sensed this process would go wrong, beaming their energy out for it to begin to reside instead in Pleiadian collectives that were welcoming these star beings into them. You could think of this as a type of astral teleportation portal. However, the way we undertake teleportation and the way you will learn to undertake it is that we do, in a sense, switch ourselves into a complete astral state by heightening all of our vibration. And then we change the vibration of that astral state to match the different physical configurations of the place that we want to arrive at. And that is how a lot of us were carried off. These two brought the volatile energy with them to these systems where it would be helpful because it would be easier to accommodate, while those of us who stayed behind, who had engaged ourselves in the future human project, we began to seek out other parts of the planet, but not before our city had fallen. And our city fell. It fell with a type of explosion. It was, though, quite local in that it took place at the center and then began to break the ley lines of the city, keeping the energetic shield intact. This meant that the foundation of the continent simply began to crumble. There were huge sinkholes opening up. There were things being swallowed up by cracks opening in the earth. There was great eruptions, and it was very dangerous to be alive physically in that place on that day. A great pillar of light opened up, and as the pyramid had begun to falter, it could no longer switch the energy either into the energetic shield keeping the city together or transmit it into the greater stargate to which the pyramid was connected. Instead, it began to burrow a hole beneath it, and there it concentrated all this energy into a hollowing out of the physical space. And so there was what you may think of as a minute black hole opening up at the bottom pyramid, the spiritual pyramid, the mirror image turning downward. And this began to draw the material in the bedrock of the continent into its own dense center, creating a type of crevice on this point of the planet, deepening it even further, but also creating fault lines that resulted in great flooding and in much of the continent being then submerged in the waves of your Pacific or your Indian Ocean. Both these things were differently aligned at this point in time. However, this is approximately where we were situated. On this day, I paid farewell to a great many deal of loved ones that I had held and been fond of in my lifetimes on the continent. See, we remembered our different lifetimes, and so that is also, of course, why we did not necessarily see our destruction, this apocalypse of the world we knew, as something final. Instead, we saw it as a new beginning, but we also knew that those of us who survived, we would have to go different places and spread our energies and teach what we had to teach before we too left the mortal coil and allowed for the human energies and the human project to develop on the planet. This energy still resides in these centers, and you are still magnetically drawn to different parts of the seabed where you sense there is great depth and great mysteries hiding there. Know that this planet is ancient. You realize this, but also know with this great sense of age comes a great planetary experience. She has seen much, and she holds many mysteries, many secret tunnels, many ruins submerged under the waves from different buildings built by builders now gone from the planetary surface. I hope this has shed some light on why Lemuria left Earth and why we are no longer here, but in spirit and in the design of human beings, that I am so happy to help awaken now. See the higher vibrational patterns. They consist of something that is mapped to the golden ratio and the holy proportions of the cosmos. And that is why you react so spontaneously joyful when you encounter this pattern mirrored in the outside world, and you see how the human body is also a creation of great harmony. I bring you my love as you awaken these patterns, and I bring the opportunity for you to connect to your own Lemurian past lifetimes, should you want to. Envision the double pyramid, envision the Star of David, this secret symbol, this secret sacred symbol, and then begin to remember, 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 remember. I way alwe now. Emini was dalailun. Ovulai ne wai nua. Ifinual wai oinue. Inda indualan yai was noa. Ikinu. Arloweni. Remember.